So just a review is all planets, so not the sun and the moon, but all the planets go retrograde. Venus and Mercury are different than all the other planets because Venus and Mercury are closer to the sun than the Earth. And so Venus and Mercury go retrograde when it enters the space in between the sun and the Earth. So it appears to be moving in the opposite direction as the sun and the moon. And so in astrology, the sun, the moon, and the planets, when they're moving direct, are moving counterclockwise. And so a planet is said to be going retrograde when it's moving clockwise as it's laid out over the in the astrology chart. So Venus will go retrograde roughly every year and a half, and it will be retrograde. Well, we can actually look at this. So here's Venus right here. It's going retrograde on the 20th. So 23rd is when it technically went retrograde. It will retrograde. So it went retrograde at 28 degrees. It will retrograde back to 12 degrees of Leo on the 4th of September. So it's retrograde for roughly 40 days.
And is there any significance to that 28 degrees?
Yeah, so in America, it's significant in that it's opposite America's moon. So here's America's moon at 27 degrees of Aquarius. So that would be significant. You also have in transit this kind of interesting dynamic in that Pluto and Neptune, so Pluto's around 29 degrees, Neptune at 27 degrees. So it would form a quincunx to both, which is 150 degrees. It's also exactly opposite their midpoint. So this double quincunx has been referred to as a yod, which is Hebrew for the finger of God. I don't know where that came from. This, I guess part of the idea is when you see one in a birth chart, it means that this person has special destiny. I personally think that's bullshit. I think everybody has a special destiny, and astrologers kind of get carried away with making things up. They probably found a handful of like important people who had one in their chart, and they decided it meant that. I did read one astrologer say when it's outer two planets forming the sextile, so in this case Pluto and Neptune, and the sun, the moon, or an inner planet at the point of that, then that is more significant and perhaps, like a true yod, according to this astrologer. And so in this particular case, that is what we're seeing here. We're also having Mercury is passing through, so Mercury and Venus will make a conjunction at like 27 or 28 degrees of Leo, probably on tomorrow or the day after, so around the 27th of September 2022.
Of September or July?
Or July.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just looking at September. Thank you for correcting
me.
So around July 27th. It's also square to Uranus within 6 degrees. So that's active. And then you also have Mars, which is kind of in the ballpark. So when Venus became stationary, so we can go back to the ephemeris here. So you can see Venus. Here's Venus right here. It's turning retrograde at 28 degrees, 36 seconds on the 23rd. So for this whole week prior, it moved less than a degree. So it's been stationary at 27, 28 degrees for the entire week prior. And so you had Mars moving through that point. And so Mars and Venus made a conjunction. The exact conjunction would have been roughly a month ago, but they're kind of right around each other. And so in this time period when Venus was really slowing down, Mars was also passing through that point. And so this whole month of July, you've had Mars and Venus like within a few degrees of each other, I guess within 5 degrees of each other in the time leading up, and then Mars separated so that it was 10 degrees away or 9 degrees away from Venus when it technically turned retrograde. So it's still kind of in the ballpark and having an influence. And so this is particularly relevant in America in that it's opposite the moon. So it will perhaps affect like the general population, like in our homes. And I have noticed that there's been a different kind of emotional quality to this past month. There's been kind of an unsettled type feeling in my own life, as well as many people I know. So what does this mean? What does Venus retrograde mean? That is the question. And so, as I am inclined to do, I'm going to be deliberately vague here. And what I'm going to say is, what does Venus mean to you? And so this is, if you've watched some of the other videos, particularly the video on the planets, I talk about what Venus means, but as I understand it, Venus represents what we find beauty in. And this quality of beauty is more important, in my opinion, than most people acknowledge. What we find to be beautiful will dictate what we value and what we seek in relationship, and what we go about seeking to create, and what we want in life. It also represents just like females in general. So perhaps for America, it could represent like the female population. In a woman's birth chart, it could represent their female friends, as well as how they like find beauty within themselves and present it, and go about making themselves attractive to others. And in a man's chart, if they're attracted to women, it could be what they're attracted to in a woman, which is also going to be what they find find beautiful. So when a planet goes retrograde, it shifts the energy. So whatever Venus means to you is going to be kind of slowing down and going into this place of, typically in astrology, a retrograde is like, this is a time to reflect. So like Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year. So where Venus only goes retrograde once every year and a half. Mars is roughly once every 2 years. So it's less common and doesn't get talked about consequently, because and Mercury retrograde seems to create a little more chaos. However, what I'm saying here, and what I'm noticing, is that this particular Venus retrograde is in a particular position where there figures to be a little more tension that comes with it, because it's also square to Uranus, and it will be square to Jupiter when it stations direct. So this is perhaps a good time to really reflect on, what do you value? What do you find beauty in? How do you go about creating beauty? And and Venus also applies to relationships. I'm not denying that. In fact, it very much rules relationships. And what I'm suggesting here is, what we find beauty in and value very much dictates the type of relationships that we seek and how we behave within relationships. So that larger quality of beauty also pertains to what do we enjoy? How do we play? How do we have fun? How do we create love and joy and excitement? Those types of things. And so,
sorry to interrupt you. My Venus is in the 5th house, and I always also associate it with children. And I think it's that playful, and I think I associate beauty with children. And so again, would you agree that you'd look at the house that your Venus in particular is in?
So you could look at the house and sign and house, as well as the aspects of your Venus. Well, just like any other planet, like any transit, the way it will affect you individually is not like universal. It affects everybody the same way. It affects you based on how that planet is configured in your birth chart. So the sign, the house, and the aspects, as well as midpoints and any other things if you want to kind of go deeper with it. So then, where Venus is retrograding in your chart as well, the house in particular, it's possible that area of life will somehow be affected. Interestingly, it's going retrograde in my 2nd house, and things have really slowed down at work. I've had various things going on in my life, and like money. We were just talking about this earlier, and it's like, I know in my heart everything's going to be okay, but it's like that domain in my life in particular has kind of slowed down. And so now it's like, okay, perhaps I can reevaluate how I'm going about making money, or saving money, or anything like that. So yeah, that's so for men who are heterosexual, it's possible that there could be something within your relationship, if you have a romantic partner, that is things there may be some kind of change, something kind of slowing down, the time to kind of talk, to consider about how you're going about being intimate and romantic, or how you're going about having fun, or perhaps like how you're doing things at home. It's something within the relationship, perhaps, to kind of be evaluated and reconsidered. If you're a woman, it may affect your female relationships, like your friendships. It may also be a time where something about like how you're presenting yourself in the world.
And I already know what you're going to say. But I think just going back to cookbook astrology, I've always seen this thing, and I know you're not going to agree with this, but, Venus retrograde is not a good time to meet a romantic partner, which, again, I know what you're going to say. If you're meant to meet somebody at a certain time, you're going to meet them, and you shouldn't not, start a relationship because Venus is in retrograde. But that is this, cookbook astrology that people kind of doom these relationships that begin on a Venus retrograde. But again, that's, but I just want you to kind of debunk that.
Well, so what I would say is, live your life. Notice what happens if you happen to meet somebody in or around the Venus retrograde. Just kind of remain open to like what's different. What I would suggest is that there's going to be something different. So if you're somebody who's maybe been single for a while, or had like unsatisfying relationships, it might be the exact opposite is true. Is that this is a great time to meet somebody, particularly if you're a woman, and to really kind of go within yourself and do some of your personal work, and think about like who you are on the dating app. You know what I mean? And perhaps it's time to change your profile. And if you're a man, maybe it's time to think about what it is that you actually are looking for in a woman. Maybe things aren't working out because you really haven't done the type of self-evaluation work to look at who you are, and to really think about like, is what I'm seeking in a woman what my soul is truly seeking, or is it just what I was indoctrinated into wanting